Hello everyone. I'm Ismail. I work for Schibsted. Schibsted is quite established here in Sweden and Norway and France. So just for people who don't know Schibsted, we work in the online classified websites, which means we allow users to buy and sell their second-hand items. Schibsted is not only here in Scandinavia or in Europe, so it's all over the world in 30 countries. Okay, today I'm going to talk about how to grow any products using data. I am a data scientist, but I work mainly in understanding user behaviors in order to take better business decisions, whether adding some features on the product, either removing the features that doesn't work well. So this is the kind of work. Yeah, exactly. This is the kind of work that I do. Basically, how we can grow a product. Basically, I work in this field, which is how we can grow products. By growing, I mean either in terms of users or in terms of revenues. For example, we have a product that has, for example, 1 million unique visitors per day. How we can make it 10 million unique visitors per day. How we can increase revenues by 20%, by 30%. By analyzing data and trying to understand user behaviors and finding insights within the data. Yeah, so this is an overview of what I do. Usually we try to work iteratively on our products. By building experiments. So once we come up with an experiment idea, we try to implement it into production to see its results, and then we can iterate upon. So we can get rid of the experiments that doesn't work well, and we can keep the experiment ideas that works well. Working well, it means either increasing number of users or increasing revenues or better strategic. It gives us a better strategic place. Yeah, I usually try to follow this framework in order to build experiments that gives us positive results. The build phase, the measure phase, and the learn phase. So the build phase is basically building the experiment, and measure phase we try to see the impact of the experiment that we have built. And the learn is that we try to learn from that experiment, so we can use this learning for the following experiments. So we try to work in an iterative process. Yeah, but the problem here is that the building phase is the most time-consuming part. Building is very hard. It's tedious, it's time-consuming. So we try to focus all our work, or 80% of our work, on this phase, which means that we try to come up with the experiment ideas that have a higher probability of success, because we can come up with an experiment idea, we'll put it into production, maybe we'll spend 1 month, and it will give us bad results. Then it's a 1 month of time waste. So I try to follow a framework in order to come up with good experiment ideas that have higher chances of giving positive results. So I'm going to share with you some of these rules of thumbs in order to come up with good experiments. So first we try to focus on retention. So as you know, so there is this model, this acquisition, activation, retention, revenues, referrals. So this famous framework that starts with acquisition and ends with revenues and referrals. So we try to focus on the middle, which is retention, because once we make sure that the retention is very strong within our product, then we can acquire as much as we want later on. We don't try to acquire, we don't try to build huge marketing campaigns for acquisition unless the retention is good. Because if we acquire, we can spend a lot of money on acquisition and then the retention is not good, then maybe you are going to just waste these marketing campaigns. So all our work, we try to focus on this part, which is retention. And also retention, it also impacts other business metrics like number of active users, number of sessions, session lengths. So So this is really our focus. So also when we talk about retention, we talk about retention of actions that really has a business meaning. Which means, for example, in our products, it is, for example, either buying or selling. For example, if someone returned but just opened the app and then closes it, then maybe we are not going to count this as retention. So maybe retention is someone who has done one of our core values, which is an important action, which is either buying, selling, or just browsing our website and see what the market, what there is in the market. So we try to define these critical events, which are our core values, and we try to analyze their retention. Just one thing. So usually the core value of our products, usually they are not always in the first step. Like you have to do one action, then the second action, then you will find the core value. Like for example, you want to insert an ad, maybe you're not going to find the insertion, the button of insertion ad at the home page. Maybe you have to click somewhere, then go to the insertion page. So these steps, we try to put them into funnel analysis. So we try to see if there is any drop, if there is any huge drop between any steps. So if there is one, so we should try to understand why there is this drop, so we can try to avoid this if problems, if any. So we can make the experience very smooth, and users get the most of our core values. Okay, cool. So there is one question that I was thinking about lately, which is, yeah, we focus on our retention, but how can we know that our product is actually really growing? Which means that we can like spend a lot of money on acquisition, we can bring people, but how can we know that actually our product is really growing? Because if you acquire, for example, 1,000 people, just as an example, if you lose afterwards these people, then your product is not growing. So I was looking for a single metric that shows me that our product is growing, which means that, for example, if I acquire 1,000 people, at least like we keep 500. We keep them within us. We are not going to lose them afterwards. So the framework that I use is this based on what we call by usage intervals. So usage interval is basically the frequency at what users return to do a core value, or to do a critical event, or to do an event that matters. For example, for buying at Blocket or something, for example, we try to calculate at what frequency in average users return to buy. For example, if we find, for example, that 2 weeks is the in average users return like every 2 weeks to buy, as an example, or 1 week. So these 2 weeks is gonna be, we are going to call it as an interval or a usage interval. So for example, we are here in the current 2 weeks. So the previous interval is the previous 2 weeks, and so on. So the current 2 weeks, if we have, for example, a new user who showed up for the first time in the current interval, so we can call him a new user. If someone, he was in the previous interval and he's again in the current interval, we can call him a current user. And if someone, he was not in the previous interval and he is in the current interval, we call him as a resurrected user. So we try to separate our users into new users, current users, and resurrected users based on these definitions. And we try to see that if we want to know if our product is growing, what we basically do is that we try to see the current users, who are the users who keep returning every interval. If we the percentage of keeping them is high. For example, if we know that like 80% of users, they keep returning every interval, then we know that actually as our product is growing, and then we can be very confident into acquiring users and onboarding them into our product. Cool. Okay, so current users. So we try, as I said, we try to classify our users into three I would say types. So new users, current users, and resurrected users. So the current users, it's very important to understand the behavior of current users. These are the heavy users, or the users who are really regular at our website. So we try to understand their behavior, and we try to see what the real core value they get from our app. And what we do is we try to construct what we call personal behaviors, which means that we do some clustering, machine learning clustering methods, for example, like key means, and we try to cluster the current users based on their behaviors on our product, and try to come up with different clusters, and trying to understand every cluster and what's the actual core value every cluster gets, so we can enhance their experiences. Uh, so basically we use k-means in this case, and yeah, come up with independent clusters that behave somewhat differently. Yeah, new users, we try to deal with them a bit differently, because a new user is someone who was just entered. So maybe he's not yet used to the product. Maybe we have to onboard them. So first we try to understand if the onboarding if it's necessary or not. So we try to do some experiments, like we try to put an onboarding, and if we find, for example, people that just close the onboarding and then start using the app, then maybe that's an idea that the onboarding is not very necessary, because the app is very intuitive. Or if not, yeah, we keep the onboarding, and then we try to see if there are so the onboarding usually it gets like it has like 3 or 4 steps, and we try to see if users really continue until the last step, and if there is any huge drop between any of the steps of the onboarding, we try to solve this problem. Also, what we do is that for new users is that we try to understand what makes a new user return afterwards. What we notice is that some new users, they find the app very intuitive, they get hooked to it, they return. There are some small percentages of new users, they entered, sometimes they don't get very easily how it works, then maybe they will not return very soon. It takes some time for them to return, so we try to understand what makes these users return more easily, and the other group not. So for this task, we usually use the confusion matrix and the F-score. So for example, let's take an example. For example, for every event in the app, we try to say that, for example, we build one very simple predictive model. We say that predict every user who has done this event more than 2 times, predict him as he will return next week, and if not, he will not return. So this is the predictive model, very simple, based on one event and how much this event has been done. And then, so this is the predictive model, and then we try to see the ground truth, and we build the confusion matrix, then we calculate the F-score. But the most interesting part is that when we do this method for all the events and for all the thresholds. So we take all the events within the app, all the thresholds. For every event with a threshold, it's a predictive model, and we calculate the confusion matrix and the F-score, and we try to see what is the event and the threshold that with the highest F-score, and which is the most predictive of retention. Once we understand that, for example, we found that the highest F-score is this event 3 times. If it has been done 3 times, then it's predictive for the retention. Then we try to push every new user to do this event at least 3 times as soon as possible. That will make him return afterwards. So this is basically what we do. So Facebook also do this. So for example, they know that a new user who has at least added 7 friends during first 10 days, they are more likely to return. So that's why like 5 years ago or something, when we were trying to create a Facebook account, the first thing that comes up is that add your friends. So because they know that this is very retaining. Resurrection, so these are users who we haven't seen them for some time, so we try to understand why. We can try to analyze their data before they have churned, their behavior on the product, in order to avoid this any event that may be predictive of churn. And also we try to analyze from another point of view, is that those who return to the product, when they have returned and why they have returned, which means we try, for example, to analyze the data after they have returned. Is it if they have returned to do like they have heard that there is a promotion of something, of a product, then they will return. Because understanding this, it will give us some experiment ideas for marketing campaigns. So for example, if we find that users, they return because they have heard there is a promotion in our products, then what we are going to do is that building marketing campaigns that for people who we haven't seen them lately, to say, hey, there is a promotion, yeah, you can benefit from it. And then once he comes back, we try to deliver him a good experience, so we can keep him within us. Yeah, so we have seen quantitative feedback, so also qualitative feedback is very important. Trying to, we are very customer oriented. We try to understand our users better, to discuss with them, to see what they like, what they don't like. This is also very interesting source of information on top of quantitative analysis. Yeah, we usually get also very good feedbacks and good data from qualitative feedbacks. Okay, so we do, so all what we have seen, it gives us a lot of insights, but the problem of the insights that we have talked about is that usually it gives us an idea about correlation, but not causation. So as you know, correlation doesn't mean causation, so we try, in order to see if there is a real causation, we try to build experiments and A/B testing experiments. We try to build like control and target group, and like do a treatment on the target group and see if there is any improvements on metrics of the target group comparing to the control group. But the change or the difference, it should be quite significant. So we use a lot of statistical methods in order to prove that. So like statistical significance, in order to see if the change is not due to chance, but it's really due to the treatment we have done to the target group comparing to the control group. Yeah, so we have seen how to come up with experiment ideas, but the problem is that sometimes we come up with a lot of experiment ideas, but the most difficult part is that from which experiment you have to start. Like you come up with 20 ideas from analyzing the data, but am I going to start with the first experiment, with the 5th experiment, with the 10th experiment? So we try to follow a framework in order to prioritize experiment ideas. So we try to base our judgment on 3 metrics, which is ease, confidence, and impact. So impact, how impactful the experiment is going to be, if it works. The ease, how easy to implement the experiment. So maybe some experiments, they take like 1 month to be implemented. Maybe some experiments, they take just 1 day. So the 1 day, it's gonna get a higher priority. And also the confidence, how confident we are that the experiment will work. If we are quite confident, then also these experiments, they get higher priority. Okay, so the second phase, so I talked about building, measuring, and then learning. So the second phase is measuring. So measuring, one of the problems, or one of the things that we have to watch out, is that when we are comparing the control and the target group, sometimes we compare them only on one single metric, on one single success metric. This is very bad. For example, if we are comparing on a retention metric, for example, the retention rate of target group with the control group, and we find that the target group, it has very high retention rates, and then to go to the target group blindly, just following this single success metric, then this might be dangerous, because sometimes the business metrics, they are very dependent. So they have done quite well, the target group, it has done quite well on the retention metrics, but we have also to see other business metrics, like number of their sessions, their session lengths, their referrals, and a lot of other business metrics before taking the decision to go with the new treatment. Okay, so the last phase is how to learn from experiments. So at Schibsted, we try to build a lot of experiments, and what we try to do is that we try to keep a cadence, which means that we try to not to take a lot of time between experiments and experiments. So we try to build an experiment, learn from it, and then build another experiment iteratively. This is very valuable, because it allows us to build a very big knowledge, and this knowledge that we can use iteratively across the experiments. Also, it's worth sharing the learning across different departments, because some departments, even if they are not data or product people or something, they might come up with ideas. Also, if we share the results with them, that maybe someone comes up that, hey, yeah, very good results, and why not doing this? That also happens a lot. Okay, so last thing, so all what we have seen is that how to grow products, and in terms of users, and how to keep delivering core values to our users. I just gave an overview here, but there are some methods that are very powerful, and it would be better if we can use this method in order to build products that matter and that will change people's lives, because the products usually they can be within people's private life, and we should be responsible to build positive products. Thank you.